course. So I'm Rachel Hutchinson, and I am a lecturer in psychology at the University of Westminster. I'm just going to start with a quick audio description of myself as well. I'm a white woman in my early 40s with blondish brown hair tied back in a ponytail today and a big headset on. So I am very much an interdisciplinary researcher, and I work mainly on audio description. So really thinking about it not just as a an access tool, but as a kind of inclusive, creative museum interpretation. The way that we understand the museum experience and the way we've been thinking about it is that it's made up of very many different elements. So it's for some people it might be about learning, it might be about going and learning something or seeing something, but for lots of people there's so much more to it than that. It's a social thing, it's an emotional thing. It can be about well-being, or it can be about having a day out with friends. So when we think about audio description, is the question is, well, what can we do with audio description that helps give people access to all of that, to that whole experience with all of the thinking and feeling and experiencing that goes on within it? Because ultimately, we think that what museums want to do is to give their visitors something to take away with them, something that they're going to keep. So, the work that I've done on audio description has been using memory as a way of understanding how engaged people were, how much they enjoyed things, what they actually took away. So, impact, if you like. I suppose the question is, we might have vision, but does that mean we have access? I might be able to see its physical features and the salient, important features of it, but I might not know what they mean or how to interpret them or how to relate that to my own experience. But what the audio description does, because the way that audio description tends to be written, audio describers tend to use a lot of multisensory imagery in their writing. So, is that if you were describing a fire, you wouldn't just talk about the color of the flames, you might talk about the smell of the smoke or the crackle and pop that the flames make as they burn. So you're kind of embedding your language with this lovely, rich, multisensory imagery that has just got the potential to spark memories and emotions and thoughts in the mind of the listener. But one question that we had about audio description in museums was um, whether it could be used as a kind of inclusive interpretation, whether it would be useful for people who are not blind as well as people who are blind. So the first study that I did was to investigate what impact audio description might have on the experience of sighted people. So I worked with an audio description company here in the UK called Vocalize, who you probably know, and the Museum of London. And we worked with a collection of photographs by a photographer called Henry Grant. And we selected some photos from this collection and we presented them to sighted people, to 150 sighted people. And then they went away. And a month later, we asked them to tell us everything they could remember about the photos. We did lots of analysis on these memories. And what was really, really interesting was to see what the impact of these different types of interpretation. So the first thing was that the people who had listened to audio, whether that was the standard audio guide or the audio descriptive guide, they remembered more photos. And what was really interesting, and the most important finding of that study, was that the people who had listened to the audio description, the people who had their vision guided around the image, they remembered more details about the photos than the other groups. So audio description made this artwork more memorable for sighted people. We also asked people, lots of questions to evaluate how much they enjoyed the experience and how engaging they found it and so on. And the great news there was that there were no differences between the three groups. People enjoyed engaging with this art just as much, whether they had just looked at it or whether they'd had a standard audio guide or whether they had the audio descriptive guide. So that level of having their attention guided, it didn't have any negative impact on the experience. We were then interested to play around a little bit with how it could be done creatively. And we were interested to find out what happens if we enrich audio description. So, standardly, when blind user listens to an audio guide in the museum, an audio descriptive guide, I mean, it tends to be language based, right? And what we wanted to do was to see, well, what happens if we enrich it with some sound effects, try and bring it to life and take a more creative approach. So we did a second study to test and compare audio description that was just recorded language, like it's standardly done, or audio description that was enriched with sound. So this was a study with blind people and sighted people, and we showed them these photos and we mixed it up. They had half with standard audio description and they had half with the sound enriched audio description. And we did exactly the same thing as before. We asked them lots of questions about how they enjoyed the experience, and then they went away for a month. And then we got in touch a month later and we asked them to tell us everything that they could remember about those photos. And the really exciting finding from that study was that although sighted people remembered more photos with the standard audio description, when it came to the sound enriched audio description, blind participants remembered just as much as the sighted participants. So, what the sound was able to do was it was able to kind of create equity, really, and sort of level the playing field, if you like. Again, it there were some people who loved it, some people who hated it. So I would always recommend offering these things as a choice. You don't want to force somebody to listen to audio description or audio description with sound. But in my vision of the world as it will be in the future, blind and non-blind museum visitors will be able to turn up and just choose what kind of audio description they want